here we are, Partner Masters, HYCU R Shield. So if you didn't manage to see yesterday's webinar that we did, the big public launch of R Shield, you're going to get kind of a snapshot of what we announced yesterday, but also obviously a bit more tailored for you, and then a little bit more of a spotlight on the Nutanix aspect of that as well. So if you can't tell, my name is Chris Rogers. I'm a senior product marketing manager here at HYCU. So I look after all of our Nutanix, our Dell, and the rest of our hybrid cloud portfolio. And I'm delighted to be joined by Subbiah, who is SVP of products. Subbiah, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Thank you very much, Chris. And first off, thank you very much to all the partners who have actually joined us for this session. We really appreciate your time and I look forward to partnering with you and sharing with you some of the information here. Thank you.
Amazing. Cheers, Subbiah. So first of all, I don't do any webinar without this, especially a Nutanix webinar. So just a brief overview. Some of you may be new to your organizations or new to HYCU. Maybe you've recently signed up as a partner. So I just wanted to kind of give you a very, very quick overview of HYCU for Nutanix. So we are the number one data protection platform for Nutanix. HYCU R Cloud is the name of our platform that we run here. So it's a HYCU Resiliency Cloud, in case you wonder what the R stands for. So we have the deepest integration with Nutanix. So we've got multiple validated blueprints and designs. We have military grade security, which we're going to go in a little bit more in a little bit more detail in some slides later on. And one of the biggest things I want to kind of show you guys is the NPS score. So here is 91. I think actually maybe I got told a couple of weeks ago it's actually gone a couple of clicks higher than that now into the 91, 92. But that really mimics the Nutanix NPS score as well. So when you're going out and your customers are saying, do you know what, I really love Nutanix because they give me a great experience. They say exactly what they're going to do. My outcomes are exactly what I needed from them. We are exactly the same here at HYCU, right? Our customers love us. They love our product. They love the outcomes that we can deliver for them. So really are aligned in that to Nutanix. So we give a great customer experience. So when you go to your customers and start recommending HYCU and saying, HYCU and Nutanix really do go well together, you can be confident that we are going to give them the best possible customer experience. Because relationships are hard to build and easy to shatter, as we well know in the industry. So you want to make sure that when you are going out and pitching HYCU and saying HYCU is the one for Nutanix and the rest of the workloads we're going to discuss today, that you can feel confident that we're not going to go and make false promises and make that customer experience a bad one. And if you look over to the right of the slide, you can see all the workloads, and this is just a subset of what we support in Nutanix. But again, pretty much whatever your customer wants to do in Nutanix and whatever data they want to land in that platform or run from, we can support that as well. So you can't have the confidence that you're going to be, positioning HYCU in the best possible light for those Nutanix and other customers. Well, so moving on to kind of the main content of the webinar here. So when we look at 20 years ago, when I first started in IT, maybe some of this was even before my time I started in IT as well. So we had this on-premise systems, right? So we had Oracle, SQL, and some of these logos I don't even recognize, so they're a bit before my time. But we had a castle, right? So we could secure the perimeter, we can secure everything around it, and it became easy, not easy, but easier to secure, right? Become easier to manage, to monitor, maintain, and cyber threats weren't a biggest thing, right? I'm sure they happened and things did happen, but it was much easier to secure that data. But as we start moving through I'm going to say through the ages, but through the years, so 10 years ago, we had an explosion. We got more on-premises systems. We now had the first IaaS vendor and a SaaS vendor from Salesforce. So data started to diversify across these different stacks, right? So we now got data on premises in a singular cloud in maybe one SaaS app. And now as we move into 5 years ago, we start to see, we've got a real focus on the on-premises. So we've got, all the well-known names there. We've got multiple different IaaS vendors. We've now got PaaS and DBaaS coming into the equation. And now we've got even bigger and more SaaS applications. And now if we look at the modern day, we've got the on-premises solutions, as we all know. We've now got even more IaaS vendors, even more database and platform as a service vendors out there. And we've got this explosion of SaaS data. So suddenly when we look at this and understand the challenges from 20 years ago and how data protection was 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, or even if we look at 5 years ago to what it is today, it is drastically different. And that's why we're addressing what we're addressing today. The threats are different, where our data is stored is different, and that's how we need to understand there needs to be a different way to do data protection. So if you're not aware of HYCU R Cloud, this is what HYCU R Cloud is. It gives us you total visibility, total protection, total recovery, and total control over your and your customers' data. And underpinning that is total coverage. So we have over 86 different integrations and data sources you can actually protect with HYCU R Cloud. That's more than anybody else in the marketplace or across any vendor. So you can feel confident again that when we're going in and talking to all of your customers and you're saying, hey, yeah, HYCU can do this, but also can back up this workload, and this workload, right? So we're expanding the reach of you and your customers' data protection. So as we start looking at the threats and start looking at what things are happening in the world, typically we're going to talk about ransomware attacks. That was something that's been happening for, maybe 15, 20 years, maybe not quite that long, but I think the biggest one that I came across was the NHS one that happened in the UK. I don't exactly know how long ago that was, maybe 10, 12 years ago. But yeah, that happened on hybrid clouds, right? On-premise workloads, they get in, place malware onto that, encrypt those virtual machines, and ask to pay a ransom, right? And data protection is kind of caught up to that, right? I mean, we're pretty good at making sure that we lock down our VMs better, and we're a bit more a bit better at providing mutability and detection, those types of pieces in those on-premise environments. But actually, the attackers have moved on as well. They were now seeing cloud conscious and SaaS attacks. So, people are going into those AWS accounts, they're going into these SaaS applications and saying, actually, I know IT and, the Nutanix or the VMware stack is going to be really highly secured. I know what IT are doing. I'm going to go and target a marketing application or a finance application that maybe the people in there aren't as savvy. Maybe their MFA is a bit weaker, or maybe they haven't even turned on MFA in that platform at all because it was just a purchase on a credit card, for instance. They're starting to get into different areas of our data via different ways, and cloud and SaaS is one of those areas now. And the last one, and this really comes into kind of return on investment for a bad actor, right? If you're looking to really have the biggest impact for minimal effort, well, guess what? If you can get into a third party or a supply chain attack, what a massive availability of customers and customer data you've got here. You look at the Snowflake attack, right? All those customers of Snowflake, they did nothing wrong. They configured everything that they needed to properly and had their security in place. They didn't get breached. Snowflake got breached and gave up customer data in customers' tenants from inside of there. So typically now when we look at the legacy data protection footprint, what we see from a cyber resilience or from a ransomware resilience, however we want to frame that, is this is where they focus, right? This is the on-premise world. And what does that give us? That gives you and your customers limited liability. Your customers need full coverage to be able to survive. And that is where I'd like to introduce you to HYCU R Shield. So this is built in a cyber resilience fabric for HYCU R Cloud. So what does that really mean? So we're going to have three pillars or three areas of focus that we're going to look at today. And if you were on the call yesterday, there will be some new information today. So it's not just a complete repeat. It's understanding what we're delivering to the market for you guys and what the message to the market's been. So when you and your customers are talking, you're both talking the same language. You understand what we've said to your customers, potentially that have started to listen to what we're saying, and then also you understand what we're saying to you as well. So it's kind of making sure that everyone understands we're talking the same language. So Subbiah, would you like to actually talk through kind of this fabric that we've got and just kind of give people a brief overview about what it is and what it can deliver?
Totally, Chris. Thank you. As people know, when you talk about cyber resiliency, the way typically the industry has looked at is saying, hey, let's actually build a new product, things like that. One of the things we at HYCU, we've been thinking about it for a while. It's almost like 2 years we've been thinking about for this one. And we said, you know what, as Chris mentioned earlier, the number of data sources which customers have to protect is significantly increased, right? It's not just the on-prem, it's not the public cloud, it's including all the SaaS, the PaaS, the DBaaS, the IaaS, so on. So what we said was, to give you true data resiliency, you have to look at the full stack. That's number one. The second one, that's the fundamental thing, right? That's the coverage. But then if you look at for data resiliency, the first one is to say, how do we keep all of the data protected, right? Before keeping the data protected, you have to keep the infrastructure protected. That's the fundamental part. So there are three legs to the pillars. The first one is, how do you keep the infrastructure solid, and how do you make sure the data the infrastructure protects is safe? That's the first one. The second one is that you have to continuously observe what is actually happening in the infrastructure, right? Because as all of us know, as much as it's a one-time set and forget thing, you have to continuously monitor. There are things you have to build And this is where it's a repeatable thing. And we always think of how can Haiku eliminate unnecessary work for customers? How do we build things into the product so we can help you with this thing? So that's the observing part. How do we do that? The third thing comes down to is that how do we, as much as we can prevent it, try to prevent it? Bad actors are smart and they are always trying to one up the game from you. The question is that how do you actually, in case the bad thing happens, how quick can you recover? Again, when you think in terms of recovery, it is just not the on-prem, it's not the public cloud, it's also including all of the SaaS services. How do you do that, right? So it's a holistic approach. We got to do that. And one of the conscious decisions we made was instead of making it an independent standalone product, we said it has to be built into the fabric of what we deliver, which is our cloud, right? So it's like imagine this as a shield which protects your R cloud and the data it does it. So I think that's what Chris, you're going to talk about more. So please do.
Yeah, absolutely. So exactly as Subbiah said here, you'll see some slides later on where I explicitly state this. So HYCU R Shield isn't a new product from HYCU. We're not announcing a brand new product that you guys are going to have a new price and a new SKU and go out to market and start selling R Shield. That is not what we've announced. That is not what the product is. HYCU R Shield is a fundamental piece of our cloud. It is that shield. It's that wraparound layer that provides the cyber resilience throughout the whole entire R cloud platform across our Nutanix multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, SaaS, AI ML workloads, IAM workloads as well. All of those workloads are going to have HYCU R Shield built in. And moving forward, and again, I'll bring Subbiah in later on this, is where we go next, right? This isn't a one-time thing. This is the start of our journey to being the number one cyber resilience company in the world as well. Like we are with number one Nutanix data protection and number one SaaS data protection vendor in the world, we want to be the number one cyber resiliency company in the world as well. And we're not going after CrowdStrike and things like that. We're solely focused on protecting the backups, right? Making sure backups are the last line of defense and making sure they work, making sure they're ready, making sure that we can do that. So if we look at the first pillar here, we've got always protected. So at a snapshot, resilient backup infrastructure, a reduced backup attack surface, and complete protection of all data. So one of the things that I found really, really shocking when we started looking into this was the amount of attacks that actually go after backup software and backup in repositories explicitly. So from Backblaze, a state of backup, 93% of ransomware attack actively target backup repositories. That's a huge amount. And again, this all comes down to kind of like the ROI or, backing people and backing organizations into corners. Because if they manage to get hold of your production data, that's really bad. If they manage to get hold of your production data and your backup data, there is no other option for you, right? You can start your company again with no data, not going to be an option for anyone really, or you pay the ransom and hope that you get your data back. So if they can go after this infrastructure and get after backups, then it's so much more valuable to them. And I'd imagine if you looked at their stats with their presentation, I'd imagine they have somewhere these bad actors and these ransomware gangs. They're going to say that we have a 95% success rate if we manage to get hold of infrastructure as well as backups, right? So we have to understand that this is not just a way of recovery; it's also a what number one target for them as well.
Hey, Chris, I want to just add one thing to what you were
Yeah,
saying.
go, yeah.
I remember when we were looking at the original, when you looked at the stat, we said, like, oh my God, this must be some mistake there, like, right? And that's when we started looking at this is not just this one study. There are a bunch of studies which was done. I
Mm,
remember there was done a study done by Dell, which said 94%. There was
yeah.
done study done by Sophos, which is 94%. So it's all of them are in the high 90s. So you imagine this is like a 9 and 10 probability. As soon as the attacker comes, the first thing they go after is your backup target, right? That's the risk customers actually have. So it is a critical thing, and Chris will talk about how we can help you protect that, please.
Amazing. Cheers, Abaya. Thanks for that. So when we look at a legacy tech stack or a legacy backup stack here, unfortunately, a lot of them introduce additional risk and a larger attack surface, right? So when we look at a legacy, kind of I'm going to call it an architecture, but this is marketecture, if you will. We add agents, proxy servers, um, backup repositories, gateways, mount servers, all these things are extra, not only items that we need to think about securing and maintaining and monitoring, but also extra places where attackers can get into and monitor traffic. They're quite easy to find. Some of these are going to be legacy Windows machines or even just have to be they have to be between the backup server and the production infrastructure, right? So they know which way the traffic's going. And my first bullet point here is quite easy to find and very chatty, right? They talk between backups and production, right? So it's quite easy to figure out where backups are, where it's going to, which way the traffic's flowing. All of these carry a higher chance of carrying CVEs. Each one has a higher chance of having a CVE. The more things you have, the higher chance that one of them is going to be hit by a CVE, right? We've seen that relatively recently with loads of different vendors having incredibly high CVEs as well. Not just in the backup industry, but across the board. So, some of them, more recent ones, are 9.9s. They're huge.
Hey,
And there's,
Chris,
there's
the one
yeah,
thing on that one is CVE, in case people are wondering what CVE is. Why don't you probably tell people?
sorry, yeah, that's my tech head coming back on.
Yeah.
Sorry. So yeah, so a CVE is essentially like a critical vulnerability. So it's actually a US thing, and they post out. They found a vulnerability in a particular piece of software or a particular piece of code, and they rank it on how easy it is to exploit, how dangerous it can be, and those types of things. So it's ranked from 0 to 10. 9.9 obviously being very close to 10 means it's easier to exploit, and it's incredibly dangerous as well. So it has much higher risk in your organization. So you always want to try and patch them as quickly as possible, right? Um, and then that comes on to my next one there. So more room for mistakes. The more components we have, the more things we have to manually do or manually update or have a different patching schedule for, the more mistakes that can happen, right? We're all human. We all run these things. Yes, we have automation. Yes, we have tools that can help us, but one mistake, one patch that didn't apply properly, all those types of things can lead to a higher chance of vulnerability. And then if you have vulnerability, we have potential for an attacker to get in to what is a very high value target. So the way the HYCU solves this, right, so we have a near zero attack surface and we have a super resilient infrastructure. So we like this zero architecture design or zero design architecture. So we don't have to worry about designing or architecting or securing or anything else like that. We essentially give you a pre-hardened Linux appliance. You put it into yours and your customer's environment. There's no agents, there's no servers, no backdoors. We essentially purpose built the box using the native APIs, plugging into Nutanix and the rest of the platforms that we support, and that's all we get. So you don't have to worry about patching. You don't have to worry about updating. All of that is handled by HYCU. We deliver you a new appliance. You update it. Within 10 minutes, you're ready to go again. So you have to worry about one thing. Very rarely you update that. We also then have backup data cloaking, which again, we're going to go into a little bit more detail. And also, our platform is military grade and it's battle tested, right? So we are the only data protection vendor in the world to have a DISA STIG. And again, if you're not joining from the USA, which I'm not, you can probably tell by my accent, DISA is the Defense Information Systems Agency. So you can feel very confident that our platform is ultra secure because they have said, do you know what? All the three-letter agencies in the in the USA, HYCU is cleared to be used on them, and they do use HYCU as well. Most of them do use HYCU, so you can kind of be very, very confident. Again, going into your customers and talking about HYCU, saying, do you know what? These guys are really hard to break down. Your data is going to be kept safe within their environment. You're good to go, right? So, and then moving on to the next piece here. 60% of corporate data is in the cloud. This actually shocked me a little bit. I didn't think it was just going to be this high. I'm an on-prem guy in my past, but I thought it would be less than this. But actually, it kind of shocked me that 60% of corporate data is now in the cloud in some form, in some aspect. And unfortunately, SaaS applications are a top target and low-hanging fruit. As we mentioned previously, we most organizations and most backup vendors and most kind of security vendors are really good at protecting on-premise infrastructure now. Like they've had a lot of practice over the last 25 years of doing that. But suddenly, these new workloads that are really easy to adopt, really easy to use, hold mission critical data for a lot of organizations, suddenly they become a target, but they haven't had the same practice. They haven't had the same level of investment. And all these organizations going, how do we secure and make sure box.com has all the data that we need and it's secure and doesn't get a breach, right? They haven't had the same of that. And you can see that 80% of breaches occur in the cloud from the same report from Backblaze as well. So you can see that successful breaches, 80% of those occur in the cloud. So how do we keep data safe? Well, we introduce HYCU RLog. So industry only immutable, customer owned backups. So this is the key piece that I want to make sure that we get across from this is that we HYCU doesn't ever control, own, or take anything from your data. So customer and yourself decide where is the best place for me to store my data, right? So that may be in a public cloud, that may be on Nutanix Unified Storage, that may be on a Dell data domain, that may be somewhere completely different. But it's down to the customer to decide that, and not the data protection vendor. And actually giving them full control over their data is far more valuable. They hold the keys, they hold where it goes, they own what class of storage, etc. Right? They own the sovereignty of their own data. With recent events, with geopolitical statuses and things, with countries are falling out and things, sovereignty is even more important than ever, in my opinion. So if we look at this, it's policy-driven protection. So it's truly that set and forget. It's super easy to understand. Turn it on, away you go. Immutability done. We don't have to worry about that. We've got those break glass copies. We meet that 32110 requirement. Um, all the way from Nutanix, from to GitHub, to box.com, to IAM backups, all those things need to be immutable. It's not just about on-premise infrastructure anymore. So you can see that from here there. All of this infrastructure here is supported under the RLOG platform. And now if we look at some of the issues we have here, so ransomware attacks, how do we get over those? We follow the 3-2-1-1 rule. So if anyone doesn't know, 3-2-1-1-0 rule. So 3 copies of your data in 2 different locations, one ideally offline or air-gapped, 1 copy verified and one immutable, sorry, and with 0 errors in your backups as well. So we have that available to us with immutable backups, defined runbooks for recovery and resilience testing. And what are the risks to the data that's in SaaS and cloud? Because it's not exactly the same. No one's going to go in and you can't encrypt your Salesforce tenant, right? That doesn't really exist in the SaaS world, right? It's more going to be a supply chain attack. It's going to be a malicious deletion from insider threats or a misconfiguration from vendor or yourself. And typically, we have around more than 200 SaaS apps in a mid-sized organization. I think it might even be higher than that, Subbiah. Do you have the number from our last report? I can't remember. I think it might have been 300 plus, I think.
Absolutely. So more than 217 was the last, and right now it's closing to 300. Yes.
Yeah, amazing. And less than 10 are supported by most backup providers. So if you think that the customer's got circa 300 SaaS applications in their organization, but more than likely their backup providers provide support for less than 10, suddenly they have this huge risk, and they've got data and configuration and important information inside of these SaaS systems that are no longer protected. A lot of them only have managed storage options. So yes, you can protect some of this data in some of the niche applications that are out there, but actually you're giving up the control of your data because it's in someone else's cloud. It's in someone else's data centers with their keys, and they have access, right? So do you actually get protection? Yes, you get a bit of protection, but actually you're subscribing to one SaaS app that may have a supply chain attack, but you're subscribing to another. Doesn't help you mitigate that. Right? With HYCU, we can help you mitigate that because you always control your data. So your customers always control their own data. I think that's super important to get across. A lot of them don't have immutability options, and they don't have any way of restoring the data outside of the platform it's in. So if I'm going to use box.com just because it's the biggest one I can see on my screen right now. If you have 10 terabytes of box data, great, you can back it up. But if box.com is down itself, they've got a networking issue, or DNS goes down, which normally takes down, or S3 goes down, which seems to take down the whole internet with it for some reason if they have an outage. Or what are you going to do? You still can't get access to that data. So we're going to again address how we can help with some of those things as well. So we understand that we've got to protect our Nutanix, but also our entire data estate. So this is what we're trying to get across to customers, and honestly, you're the key to all of our customers. Is being channel only, you hold relationships to all of our customers. Is that we are the number one data protection vendor for Nutanix, but also across the entire data estate. There's probably conversations that we can have with you and your customers to say, there's applications and data and configurations out there that need protecting, which we can almost guarantee that you aren't protecting today. And all that data can be written back down onto customer-owned storage. So that could be Nutanix objects, that could be a Dell data domain, that could be Wasabi, whatever else it might be. That can be whatever they want it to be. And then when we look at our shield for Nutanix, sorry, about our log for Nutanix, the easy mutability. The piece that I like the best around this is always on. You add a target that's immutable enabled, and that's all you need to do. You don't need to configure anything else on a backup or a policy or anything else, but by case-by-case basis. If data is stored in a mutable repository, it's immutable. Doesn't matter if we need to add it to a policy, none of that. No need to tick it on, tick it off. It's always on. Again, storage independence is one of the key things that if we saw the webinar yesterday, as Simon mentioned, our CEO, we don't want to sell storage. We're not a storage company. You guys have other storage vendors that you're going to go and talk to and resell. We don't want to be a storage vendor. So we give customers and yourself complete freedom to go to market and say, well, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to do, you can do. We don't penalize you for growth. We don't license on backup capacity or backup throughput or anything else like that, right? It's on an object basis. So if for some of our competitors will have an appliance and you pay for the software and the storage on a per gigabyte stored. Great. But as the company grows, they pay not only for the backup storage, but also then the software licensing incrementally. They're getting penalized for that growth. You can have multiple different copies in multiple different places. So you can diversify that data portfolio by saying, okay, we can store some on immutable cloud storage, we can have some on a data domain, we can have it in Nutanix objects, we can have a copy on tape if we want. Whatever you want to do with your customers and whatever strategy they have, HYCU can help you support that. And also, we are Vault compatible. These conversations come up very regularly now. It's becoming more of a normal conversation, whereas before it was like super enterprise only, top 100 companies in the world that could afford a cyber vault. That is being pushed down through mid-market as well. So we are compatible with the number one selling cyber vault in the marketplace as well, which is the Dell Cyber Vault. And again, just want to highlight that retention lock is enabled on the storage unit. Therefore, nothing else for you guys to do. Super simple, super easy for the customer to understand. They've got the little lock icon. As soon as they store data in there, it is immutable. And then we look at backup data cloaking. So this is a really interesting one. So it's obvious when you say it out loud that backup data should only be accessible to the backup system or the backup service, right? That's an obvious thing to say. It sounds really stupid, but actually that's normally not the case. So what we have at HYCU is the ability to give you continuous secure configuration checks. And what I mean by that is if we set up a bucket or you set up a bucket for your customers in whatever, in Amazon, let's say, or Google Cloud, wherever else it may be, if you have public access or if you have an NFS share which has access to other things, we're actually going to tell you in HYCU as an alert to say, by the way, something else can see the data and read the data other than HYCU. That's something you need to do. And that's not just from an initial, we'll do it one time when you're adding the target. If something changes in that, we'll tell you as well. So imagine if someone's got hold of your Amazon tenant and they managed to change permissions and they're doing a slow creep to see what they can do. Suddenly, one permission changes on one bucket that backup data is being stored. Guess what? We're going to tell you that something's changed in that environment. We'll say it was secure, it's no longer secure. It's now that bucket's been made public, for instance. That's something that we can help you with as well. We also have an independent network for our backup service. So no access to external networks. And in public cloud, we have no external IP access available as well. So you're really locking down that networking to make sure it's as secure as possible. And again, I mentioned a minute ago, Cyber Vault ready. So we can replicate the data to a fully air-gapped infrastructure. I think that's really, really key for making sure that data isn't available anywhere. What's more what's more cloaked than somewhere completely off network, completely hidden, not even connected to networks. That's the ultimate data cloaking, right? Subbiah, before we move on to observing, have you got anything else to add to the protection piece?
It's actually one of the things I just want to add to what you were saying, Chris, here is that this is available when we look at both the on-prem infrastructure and public cloud infrastructure. We look at it. That's something there. This is a very significant part. It's an ongoing thing. If you have other things which you think we as a company can do, please do share with us. This is an ongoing thing. We're going to be continuously enhancing it because there is not one set and forget them. The way we also think of this is like some of you in think of this as what we call backup posture management. The question is that how do we make sure the data is our system continuously checking? Are you safe? Right. That is one of the things here. So.
Amazing. Perfect. Thank you. And if you do, guys, if you do have any questions, please put them into the chat or into the QA. We've got Subbiah and other people monitoring in the background as well. So if you do have any questions or any clarification is needed, please put it into the chat or the QA. Right, so let's move on to observing. So how do we protect what we don't know about? I think that's a very key thing. You can go and ask all your contacts, all your customers. Do you think you know all of your data? Do you think you know where it all lives? And they'll probably say yes. But realistically, do they? Do they actually know exactly where their data lives, where it's going to be, what applications they're running? A likelihood is no. And this kind of comes from experience, right? So, but I know we have the Boston Red Sox as a customer, right? We asked them how many SaaS apps, and they said a really low number. I can't remember. It was like the 20s or something. And when they ran our discovery tool, do you remember the number that they had?
It's over 900 in that portal. 900
900.
services they actually use.
Yeah. So that's a real life customer that we went in. They thought they knew we asked the question, do you know where your data lives? Do you know how many SaaS apps you're running? Do you know what applications you're running in your Nutanix environment? And they say, yep, we're on top of that. We've got it in our CMDB, we're ready to go. They were out by a factor of, whatever that is, 500% or whatever whatever that factor is, out by a huge amount because they didn't know. Some of these were line of business applications, some of these were really specific applications. But guess what? They didn't know about it, so they couldn't protect the data. And then when we visualized that data for them, they understood what they needed to do and they understood how to protect the data. We can then look at application specific anomalies. And these are going to be different for different applications, right? These are going to be individual for each SaaS application or a different so for each platform. So Nutanix is going to have different anomalies to an Okta environment, for instance. And then last but not least, for our Nutanix customers to start with, we're going to be able to scan for ransomware or malware inside that. And we are going to go into these in a little more detail as well. So the first piece is visualization. So we have a tool called rgraph. Hopefully everyone in our partner community is aware of rgraph and you've been using it with your customers and it's a great tool. But if not, it's a data visualization tool, right? Completely free to use, sign your customers up. It's a great way of, building relationships and, expanding from, maybe you're and they're a network customer of yours or, whatever else may be. It's a great way to start a conversation around data protection, cyber resilience, those types of things. And they sign up, they give us the read-only access to their environment. And rgraph goes away and catalogs all of their SaaS applications, lists them out here, and then shows them what's unprotected. We list them into categories, so infrastructure, DevOps, ITSM, collaboration. So you can say, oh, but did you know that your marketing team are using this or your HR team are using this? And they go, no, we didn't actually. Oh, great. Did you know it's not protected? No, we didn't. Great. What a great way to start a conversation. So this is a really, really amazing visualization tool. And then if we dig down into one layer below that, if you're running Nutanix workloads, one VM, I could name all my VMs, VM 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to, however many thousands of VMs we're running. It doesn't tell me what's in it. It doesn't tell me what's running. So actually inside of our Nutanix platform, our cloud for a hybrid cloud edition, which is for Nutanix, we actually have automatic agentless application discovery. Give us read-only credentials to those workloads. We're going to go away and we're going to discover those applications, bring them in. Then from a protection standpoint, if you understand what you're looking at, you can protect it best possible. Your Oracle databases are going to be protected different to Exchange, going to be different to SAP, going to be different to SQL, for instance. So you can then tailor your protection depending on what you discover. It seems like a really stupid thing to do, but actually, if we can do that simply, easily, again, with zero agents, that's so much easier for the customer to understand their data estate just in a Nutanix environment to say, actually, yeah, these items live in a tier 1 policy, these items live in a tier 2 policy, because I can see it all in the same place. I don't have to try and cross-reference CMDB that may or may not be up to date with what's in my Nutanix environment to then translate that into my backup environment. All in one place, we discover, and we can protect all in that single place. And now if we look at anomaly detection, so identifying workload and application specific anomalies. So we do this across VMs, file shares, and also as a service applications. So for Nutanix virtual machines, anomaly is going to be things like change rate. So a dynamic change rate. Your average change rate over the last 30 days has been 7%, whatever it may be, right? Oh, yesterday it was 59%. That's an anomaly. It needs to be investigated. We can tell you about those things. And if we look at as a service, that's not going to be the same type of metric. For an Okta, for instance, Okta Workforce Identity Cloud, it's going to be the number of objects that changed because the amount of data or the percentage doesn't really equate to the same thing. So we're going to tell you how many objects have changed inside of that environment. So you can understand actually, typically, we see 1 or 2 changes here and there as someone gets added or something gets changed or whatever it may be. Actually, yesterday we saw 200 changes. That might be completely legitimate, right? That might have been a big piece of work that the Okta administrators did. But actually, it's great to understand and ask that question. Was this legitimate or was this not? And suddenly that anomaly points to, oh, actually, maybe we have a bigger problem. Oh, I can understand that. So that's what we're doing across that modern data estate, the anomaly detection dependent on the workload. And then we move on to malware scanning. So this is the one that I'm probably the most excited about. So fast, efficient scanning, malware scanning, ransomware scanning, however you want to do it for Nutanix VMs. And a key point here is I've put Nutanix VMs and not AHV because we will support any hypervisor on top of Nutanix. So that could be ESXi, AHV, etc. So just to want to make that clear for customers who are still running ESXi on Nutanix or running AHV on Nutanix, we work with both. So the first piece is rapid detection. So we actually do the detection at the source. So we don't ingest it into our backup platform, place it on customer-owned storage, and then query and look at it then. We actually do it at the source. So on the Nutanix cluster itself, we scan workloads right there. The second piece, which I think is, we've spoken about this a lot over here, but data control. Data is always with the customer, and it never, ever leaves their control, not even metadata. So HYCU doesn't take it up into HYCU-owned cloud and run a load of metrics and scanning from our cloud. It's completely in the customer's tenant, right? This could be a dark site if they wanted it to, right? They could have it completely dark, not connected to the web or anything else, and they can still run ransomware scanning using HYCU. We do double protection. So it's not just the metadata scan. We're looking at real data using a Yara rule. And if you don't know what Yara rule is, it's just essentially like a rule to match patterns in files, right? So it's a very common open source platform of way of detecting malware. You'll see it everywhere, and loads of places have their own custom Yara rules. Even organizations create their own Yara rules themselves, which we support as well. So it's a very well known way of doing it, and one of the most comprehensive ways of doing it as well. And that leads us on to backup storage independence. So we can scan data that is backed up to any storage. So we don't have the reliance on our own storage. As I said before, HYCU doesn't sell storage. We don't care whether you want to go direct to the cloud, so into AWS, put it onto Nutanix objects, onto a data domain, wherever else you want to place you and your customer's data is completely down to you and your use case, but you can still scan that data using the RShield scanner from HYCU. So hopefully that gives you a good understanding of what we do. This is the slide we typically get the most amount of questions on, but I haven't got loads of time to really deep dive it and go into it. But
Hey,
hopefully
Chris, can I just jump in? I just want to add a
go
couple
for
of
it.
things
Yeah.
there. This is very important. I just want to re-emphasize some of the points which Chris was mentioning. Traditionally, if you look at people when they talk about scanning, they talk about scanning post the backup in the backup data. That's when people look at it, right? That's definitely a viable approach, and people should do that. The challenge, I think, what happens for a lot of customers is that in backup storages are designed to ingest data, lots of data very, very quickly, right? That's the whole power, because you have tons of data coming in. If you're going to write everything and read every time to do a scanning, that becomes very expensive. And the amount of infrastructure required is also very expensive. That's number one. The second one, the challenge which we heard from customers is that a lot of our customers do actually send copies directly to the cloud, right? When they send to the cloud, if they have to bring the data back to do a scanning, that's an expensive proposition because you're going to pay egress cost. One is the time, the second is the egress cost. You don't want to do that, right? That's one of the reasons we said, how could we do differently? And the third part, I'll tell you, though, which is the important thing, is most people, when they scan, they just look at the metadata or just look at some parts of the file. They think they want to optimize, or they lose random set of files, things like that. That is not a good safety mechanism. That's one of the reasons what we are trying to do is we are trying to look at all of the changes which actually happen on a continuous basis at the file level. That's what we are doing, and we are doing it right at the source, and that's why this is different for many of the customers. We would love to hear more feedback at something there. There is a question from Imran. Imran, you had asked the question saying, does malware detection on non-Nutanix work as non-Nutanix as well? Today, as of we talking right now, you are seeing that we actually do for AHV and ESX on Nutanix. You will actually have all of the file systems which we support, like NetApp and Isilon, which is like PowerScale, and Nutanix files and so on, and generic files will actually happen by May 7th. That'll be there. That's the second one. And in addition to that, we will actually have the full VMware coverage, like some of the things you talked about, VMware coverage in June, which is like about a month and a half, approximately a month and a half from now. You should actually have even the classic VMware. Which we will do. Azure Local is a little challenging because of the way the snapshot thing. We are working with Microsoft on that. Hear from us shortly on that. Thank you, Chris.
Amazing. Cheers, Subbiah. Yeah, that kind of reiterates what we've been saying, right? This is the start for us. This is a very, very strong start. Don't get me wrong. But this is the start. This is the fabric being woven in, and everything we do building on top of it is going to be woven into that fabric again, right? So every time we introduce something new, or introduce something new to the market, or even build upon these capabilities, it's going to have the R shield wrapped around it again. So let's move on to the always ready piece. So again, there's not really much point in backing up data if you can't recover it, right? And no one enjoys taking backups. They're necessary evil. It's all about the recovery. So what do we have here? Well, continuous validation and assurance so that your data can be recovered, rapid flexible recovery, and supply chain protection as well. So the first one is recover with confidence. So we have validated recovery points. So we have an automated way of validating those recovery points on a policy-based um, way rather than manually testing and doing all those bits and pieces. SLA assurance and monitoring. So again, you know that your SLAs and your customers' SLAs are being met. And then resilience testing. How can we test the backups, make sure they're working, make sure the runbooks work fine as well. So the first piece is a continuous RTO assurance, which I want to kind of come for you. So three statements I think would ring true for most people. Cyber attacks are not exempt from business SLAs. Just because it's a cyber attack that's happened rather than a power outage, guess what? The businesses still expect to get their data back in the SLAs they've set, right? They don't care what the incident is. They care that they can get their applications that make them the most money back up and running as quickly as they need to, right? Knowing how quickly operations can be restored is vital. So if the business have set an SLA of 3 minutes, right, it's not realistic, right? So actually giving them an idea of what operations can be restored and when is going to be a very key metric to feed back to the business, but also in a two-way conversation, right? Here's roughly what we could meet with today, but actually, if we did this and this, actually we know we can get this down to this, right? And then often I see RTOs, they're not representative of real world. Again, I used to be a sysadmin, backup admin back in the day. Every Friday afternoon job was test backups. So we would take the same 5 VMs, we do a restore from the last restore point, bring them up. Yep, they're fine. Report back, send the email that was in the template. Yeah, all fine this week. Those weren't real world RTOs. They were the same 5 VMs that weren't really doing much. The data wasn't changed that much, all that type of stuff. We weren't testing the real backups because guess what? To test a massive SQL database took too long, right? It just wasn't there. We didn't want to do the whole infrastructure because guess what? We didn't have time to do that. We didn't have time to take stuff down and bring it up. So that's what happens. We get RTO values that are not representative. So how can HYCU help this? Well, with our RTO assurance. So essentially what we do here is in the image you can see here. Well, guess what? We got a backup every one day. That's the SLA the business has asked for, right? We have a 24-hour RPO. Well, guess what? The last time since we backed up was 23 hours, 56 minutes ago. So guess what? We're due a backup anytime this minute. And then recover in. So the policy said we recover in 5 hours. Well, we're giving you a time for recovery here of 13 minutes. Perfect. We're inside our SLAs. But what happens if I go in and throttle a network link or do something that I shouldn't have done, or a change management process goes through and a change gets made on a firewall that blocks access or stops something from working, right? We want to know that the minute that happens, that our backups are not in compliant anymore. And that's where continuous RTO assurance comes into it. There is no time like the present. We give you a real RTO in real time, and it's continuously monitored. So if something does change, we'll tell you that your backups are no longer in compliance. Those green ticks are going to turn to red. You can set up a webhook. You can set up an alerting to say, hey, by the way, our backups are no longer compliant. Or someone, a SQL database that used to be 10 gigs suddenly grows to 10 terabytes because someone's, made a pre-production VM into a production VM. That never happens. Of course it happens, right? The SLA was set at, 1 hour. Well, suddenly it's going to take 1 hour, 30 minutes because the data now is 10 times as much. We're going to tell you that data can no longer be recovered in the time that you need it to be. Then you can make changes to your backup infrastructure. You can maybe put on faster storage. You can do whatever you need to do to make that change or realign expectations in the business. Yes, we could recover a 10 gig database in an hour. Unfortunately, we can't recover a 10 terabyte database within the hour, whatever that might be. We're giving you that continuous compliance. So again, when your auditors are coming in or when we've got customers asking, well, how long is it going to take for me to get my data back? Have a look in here. Away you go. And knowledge and power. We give you that instant alerting. and comprehensive reporting as well. So we give this in an alert, so we can configure it via a webhook. So they can go straight into ServiceNow or Teams or Slack or wherever else you want to receive the data, wherever your customer wants to receive that data, and they can also pull reports directly from that as well. And next piece, I'm going to ask Subbiah to explain, which is the recover with flexibility. I think Subbiah, you did this yesterday, and I really like the way you explained this. So, would you be able to take us through this slide with the recover with flexibility piece, please?
Absolutely, Chris. Thank you very much. So when we talk about recovery, right? I mean, I think we are not talking about just the on-prem infrastructure. We're talking about on-prem, the public cloud, and the SaaS. There are a variety of steps which are there. The challenge I think most customers actually have is that at the time of recovery, ideally they want to recover to the same place, get it up and running quickly, which is great. And I think that's one of the things to Chris, what Chris was pointing out some of the things earlier, is that HYCU is the only software which leverages the Nutanix snapshot technology and the power of the platform. So from a recovery perspective, we can get you up and running very, very quickly. I'll give you a real incident. I mentioned it yesterday for people who are there. Sorry if it's a repeat. It's a true incident. One of our customers got into a nation state actor, which is imagine one country deciding I hate this particular company or whatever they want to attack the company. They continuously went after that company, and 3 times they were able to attack them. This has truly happened. And in the first case, they were supposed to pay 92 bitcoins. Today's world is like $9.2 million plus, or whatever, $10 million plus. That's there. And every time, knock on wood, I'm so happy that HYCU was able to get them up and running by next day within 24 hours, fully production ready. It's not like, oh, waiting for the live storage motion to get. No, no, no. It's full production capacity. They were up and running. That's the speed which we are able to do because of the way we integrate with the platform, able to do that thing. That's one part. But that said, there are times what happens is that, for example, if you have an attack, the some of the local agencies could be a police, could be FBI, whatever. They say sometimes freeze, don't change anything. We got to actually do analysis, forensic analysis regarding what has happened. So what they tell you is that now what do? You have to recover to something else. So you have to recover to an alternative place, either to an alternative hypervisor. You're running Nutanix AHV, maybe you're the ESX, or the other way around, ESX and you want AHV. Or you might say, you know what, there's no more infrastructure here. Let me actually bring it up on the cloud. You should be able to do it instantly, quickly, do it quickly there. For that is something HYCU could do, not just locally into a different hypervisor or to any part of the cloud, Google, Azure, AWS, get it there, right? That is the power which we actually have. That's the first part. The same thing happens. Even sometimes people think of public cloud workload. They say, why would I need a DR? It's like, guys, even in the public cloud, bad things happen. It's different set of reasons. There are times where you want to recover cross-regional recovery because for some reason your region is down or because your network connectivity to the region is down. You want to be able to bring up somewhere. That's the second part there. The third thing which actually happens for customers, this is around SaaS, right? In the world of SaaS, in our on-prem and infrastructure, classic infrastructure service, life is better, I think. The reason is that you can always bring up a new instance. SaaS is a little different, right? Because you need the application and the data. How can get you the data? What do you do with the application, right? That's where what we end up doing is that tell customers saying, we want to be able to, if you want the local, what I call surgical recovery, being able to get you a specific set of data, HYCU does it. In addition to that, one of the other things people want to do is that they have seeding in what a lot of these guys do in the SaaS world is they have what they call the additional sandbox instances. They want to be able to recover there. We can absolutely do that, no problem. And the last thing is that we'll talk about offline recovery. This is very critical. I'll let Chris talk a lot more in detail about. Chris, take it away.
Amazing, yeah. So offline recovery, it's when we're talking about the supply chain attacks and how you can protect yourself. This is how HYCU is going to allow you and your customers to protect yourself from those supply chain attacks. We can't go to Salesforce and Box and everyone else and say, hey, you can make yourself more secure. Like they're doing as much as they can to secure their platform. It's not good PR for any SaaS vendor to get hit with a ransomware attack or a cyber attack, right? So, but what happens if that is offline? It might not be a cyber attack. It could be a power outage. It could be, an issue with whatever platform they're running in, AWS or wherever else they're running, right? So we have logically separated backups outside of the cloud or the region or the individual application themselves. So HYCU runs outside of SaaS and only connects in via API. So we have no real need for the application to be there afterwards if we don't need it to be. Again, we store on customer-owned backups. So customers have sole control of their backups and their data that's been retained. The interesting thing for me was when, recently the big data protection vendor that got acquired by Salesforce. You think, oh, they've got that market locked down now. Actually, I started hearing in the field that some of the customers that via the acquisition wanted to actually look and move their backups elsewhere because suddenly we were storing production and backup data under the same company. Well, best practice, that doesn't align. Even if they're in separate regions and everything else, it doesn't have to be an actual technical reason that data isn't available. It could be a political, financial, any of those things can happen. And if that company gets impacted, potentially backups and production in the same place as well. So again, customer-owned backups, they retain control, and wherever they want to put them, they can put them. And then the last piece here, backups can be exported outside of the platform. That's not just the HYCU platform, but also the SaaS application itself. So typically people say, oh, what's the point of 365 backup or 365 is down because I can't get the data back because I can't see it because it's not in the application, right? Just like Subbiah said, you've got to have the application and the data. Well, actually, we can get you the data without having the application. So a real life kind of example for me would be like, let's say we've got Box on the screen here. So we've got, pick a number, 5 terabytes of Box data, mission critical Box data, whatever it might be. Well, Box goes down, unfortunately, or is not accessible or whatever happens, right? Or it could even be that your access to Box is down. For instance, if you've got it hidden behind Okta and someone manages to hijack your Okta, suddenly you can't get into Box because they've locked down your access where they figure out what's happening. It could be anything like that. But what happens? Okay, what we can do is, well, our backups are stored on our, let's say they're on our Nutanix unified storage, they're on our, Nutanix objects, for instance. Or we can get that data back, and you can bring it up, and you can have access to that data directly from the backups, directly from there. If you wanted to, if you know it's going to be an extended outage, you could copy that data to a file share and make it accessible via a file share for a customer. So this is suddenly how we say to customers, we're giving them the data freedom. No longer do you have to rely on the SaaS application. We can give you access to the data in those emergency circumstances without the application. So it's your data when you need it, where you need it. I think that's pretty impressive. And again, not many people are kind of going down this route, but actually it becomes very important when you start thinking about these things that SaaS applications do go down. They do have problems. Everything does in technology. So we can give you access to the data, especially for your customers' data as well. And then we can recover with complete automation. So application-centric, runbook-driven recovery. You've seen it from HYCU, you know how it works. But also, then if a customer wants to do something a bit more bespoke, well, guess what we can plug into? The Terraforms of the world or Ansibles or whatever. We give you that open API for infrastructure as code, whatever else you want to do with that. You and your customers can build something completely custom to the customer. You can build something that's repeatable for multiple customers. However you want to do that, you can build on top of our API as well. And again, we're application centric, so it's not just VMs and things like that. We can tell you what applications you are. We have an automation tool built in as well, which can help you orchestrate bulk recoveries on top of that. So hopefully that gives you an understanding of what HYCU R Shield is and what we've brought to market, and what we're going to be delivering to you and your customers moving forward. So a few things I just want to highlight before we finish and we get to any questions if there is some. So the first one, this is not an additional product or SKU. And I know I said that beforehand, but I really want to kind of make sure that hits home to everybody. R Shield is built in, and it will be a development principle and a design principle we use moving forward. Subbiah on the call is responsible for all the products we build at HYCU, and this is really close to his heart. So everything that we build now is going to have, what about R Shield? How does it relate to R Shield? How do we weave the R Shield through the fabric of the product we deliver? This is only the start. Subbiah said that a minute ago, and the first thing we delivered here is what are we, end of April. The next thing's going to be in a couple of weeks with file service. So this is a real quick pace moving at HYCU. We are an innovator. We will continue to push into areas that no one else has been, and we'll continue to push those boundaries. If you have customers that are already on HYCU, especially for for Nutanix, for instance, if they're using our premium license, they have no additional cost to them. No magic black boxes they have to buy, no extra storage they have to buy, no cloud account they have to buy, or anything else like that. No additional cost to the customers. I think that's a great benefit. We haven't introduced a new licensing tier, which is Cyber Plus, whatever else like that. Guess what? It's all built into our core licensing. And then flexibility and freedom. Give your customers complete control over their data and access to the full market. Whatever they want to do, wherever they want to place their data. If they want to sweat existing assets, buy new assets, move to the cloud, move back from the cloud, HYCU can 100% do that. To give that control back to you and your customers and say, it's not the vendor that's telling you where you should and shouldn't put your data. Now, customer, you decide. We can help you with that choice. We can help you decide what you should do. We can give you 15 different options for storage, but let the customer decide where they should store their data and what's best. And the last one, what additional revenue streams can we unlock from this? Well, we're going to continue our market leadership for Nutanix. Absolutely, we are. So whenever you hear Nutanix, I hope you scream HYCU as the next word in that. We can unlock that SaaS cyber resilience. So there's probably not many people in the conversation that are having, SaaS cyber resilience conversations. They're having conversations around cyber resilience for on-premise workloads. 100% you are. What about those applications that are currently unprotected or not protected to the level they need to be? And again, we can help you and your customers assist with sovereignty, compliance, and control. Three massive hot topics. I may have seen it more from outside the US, but with the geopolitical landscape, sovereignty has become incredibly, incredibly important to a lot of organizations, especially Europe and Asia and other places like that. So, maintaining sovereignty, compliance, and control is something that you and your customers are going to have to do, and we can obviously help you assist with that as well. So, book a demo for a customer. It has to be for a customer, not just you guys on the call, but book a demo with a customer, and you can receive a HYCU Cyber Resilience kit as well. So some great stuff in there. Even I haven't got this stuff. I'm really jealous about the hat. I haven't got a hat. Subbiah, how do I get a hat? Scan the QR code, fill in the details, get a demo for our cloud and our shield for you and your customer, and yeah, get a cyber resilience kit as well. So I'll leave that on the screen. I won't go to the next screen, which is just says thank you. Any questions? I'll leave it on the screen for anyone who wants to scan it. But do we have any more questions? I think we maybe have 1 or 2 minutes to go for questions.
Again, I've been answering a bunch of questions there,
Amazing.
Chris. And
And any ones you want to bring that out that we can do on a live, Subbiah? If there's like one best question or 1 or 2 best questions that you've come across,
there are
not to
very
put you
good
on the
questions.
spot.
I mean, there are very good questions there. I really appreciate, first off, we should probably thank everybody who
Yeah,
actually
absolutely.
came to join us for this particular session. I'm sure you'll have questions. Please send a note to us and we'll be very happy to engage with you. And if you have ideas, I mean, one thing we pride ourselves is listening to people, listening to customers, listening to partners. So if you have any suggestions, thoughts, comments, things like that, what we should do, what we could do better to help customers, please do let us know. We're always listening for you, right? That's the first thing I probably will mention. So that's we could probably leave it there, and I think give it a minute and give a minute back to people. Thank you very much,
Perfect.
guys.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one. And yeah, and if you need anything from anyone, obviously speak to your channel reps, and they can get a note to me and Subbiah directly if need be. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you all on the next one. Thank you very much.
Bye bye.